Hello everyone. We are thrilled to bring to you another episode of Behind the Badge with a very special Nottinghamshire police officer. Curious about what a typical day looks like for him? Stick around and we'll dive into his world. Hello Suk.
Hello.
So, I'm jumping onto the question immediately. What made you want to join the police?
Well, I've probably got a slightly different background from most people, where my father had joined the police as one of the first officers of colour from an Indian background, and that was in 1983. So from my early memories, the first things that I remember were moving into a police house, being surrounded by police uniform, being surrounded by talk of the police, living amongst police officers, because back in the day, in the early 80s, it was not only unusual for an ethnic minority police officer, but also we lived amongst other police families. So in the street that we lived in, our neighbours were police officers, their children were sons and daughters of police officers, and the world was very different back then. Sometimes they'd come back in the police car and you'd see it at lunchtime or you see it at the end of the day, and policing was very much sort of, you policed the area that you lived in as well, very different to today because of safety. So my early memories as a young boy in Nottingham were of the police, but the police being good. So I didn't really see perhaps what other people see in terms of the difficulty to try and change your view, navigate around that. So that wasn't solely the reason why I joined the police. That sort of gave me an early indication about the good that police does and policing does. I went off in a rather traditional format, through education. My mother was a stickler for education. You must do your exams, you must do your homework, you must study hard, and we did. And I eventually went to Loughborough University to read politics, which was a tough degree. It was a really tough degree, but an enjoyable one where it opened my eyes to new parts of the world. And then when I passed my degree, I remember distinctly that Leicestershire Police had a careers fair, and they were trying to entice academics to think about policing. And I looked at the stall and I thought, that looks really exciting, and I discussed my upbringing and my family's upbringing. But I rebelled against it because it's not really the done thing to follow after your parents. Sometimes you think, I want to make my own journey, I want to do what I want to do. So I went into sales, so I got a job, and my job took me to different countries. I went to India for a lot of time. I was working for a cricket company, which is great for someone who's Indian and loves cricket. So I went to New Delhi and Bombay, as it was then, now Mumbai. Met the Indian cricket team out there, stayed in a lovely hotel, worked with the Sahara, who was sponsored the Indian cricket team. But it didn't fulfill me. I came back and I felt my life is just going to be selling, and it's all about facts and figures and numbers. It wasn't really going to be enough for me, and I just felt a bit bored. So when I came back, I thought I needed to think hard of what I wanted to do, and I decided then to pursue the career in policing because I felt that every day was different. Policing is no day is the same, no 2 days are the same. You come to work, you don't know what you're going to face. Even this morning I come into work, I don't know what jobs have happened overnight, I don't know what happened yesterday. And I wanted to go into an industry where I felt I could make a difference to people's lives. I saw so much in terms of the bad things of the world growing up in the 80s, racism, the divide between white and black, the divide between how we were treated. I also saw that then towards the late 1990s, where we saw the Macpherson report come out around institutional racism and corruption and everything else of that nature. And I wanted to be someone deep down that wanted to change it. I thought I wanted to do something for my area. So that's why I joined the police.
So you just mentioned that you were a rebel and you really didn't want to follow in the path of your parents.
Yeah.
But again, you have given me enough information about what motivated you. Did you have any specific person as a role model or any inspirational person before you joined police? Because as you mentioned, those were the initial days when there were not too many people of color in this job.
Yeah, well, I mentioned that my father was one of the first Asian police officers in Notts, and in a time when it must have been very difficult. But I'm from a family of public servants. My grandfather was a teacher, which was unheard of for an Indian gentleman to be a teacher in the 60s, in the 70s, but he was in Nottingham, so he was well thought of locally. My uncle was a firefighter. So we were a family of public servants. We were a family of people, I think, that we wanted to give back. So in terms of inspirational role models, I think I had some in my family that made me think. But then I used to love watching the TV programs, and back then it was very much around, doing good and good versus bad. If you look back at the old films, the old cartoons that I grew up with in the 80s, it was always good versus bad. And I always wanted to be on the side of doing good. The other role models I think that I had was sort of inspirational speakers, certainly from studying politics, when you saw the impact of Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and all of these people that were so powerful in terms of public service. That's what they all had. They all wanted to do good for their area. And so I guess that's the reason why they resonated with me and they meant something to me.
Now, as you were growing up, you must have imbibed some ethics and core values from your family, from the friend circle or the environment that you were in.
Yes.
And when you joined the police, did those values, ethics resonate with the values and ethics followed in the police?
In the main, yes. Yeah. Sometimes the big thing that you've got to have if you want to join the police is a sense of public duty. Because you don't join this job to be a millionaire, and you don't join this job to live in the biggest house, and you live in this. You come to work in this industry because you want to help people in their hour of need. So the values of our police force are very simple. They're around compassion, caring, integrity, supporting people, public service, that duty, that sense of public duty. I always talk to people whenever I coach them or I talk about my journey around how important three things are to me: fairness, authenticity and integrity. In everything we have to do, we must be fair. Whether it's internal, whether it's about promotion, whether it's about opportunities, whether it's about enabling people to move around. We have to be fair. We have to be fair with everyone that we deal with. And when we're not fair, that's when we see that we come stuck. Authentic. There are too many times, and I look back in my career, that when I joined firearms, and we'll come on to that, but when I joined firearms very young in my service, there weren't many people that looked like me. There weren't many people who had the background and the upbringing that I had. There was no other Hindus on the department. There was no other people whose grandparents were so heavily involved in religion and all of those sorts of things. So I look back and I talk about this quite openly, that I was quite embarrassed of being proud of who I am. I'm not anymore, but I was back then, because the world was very different back then. You almost had to adapt to your surroundings. We don't anymore. We want people to be authentic. I want all of my officers to be true to who they are, irrespective of race, religion, belief, background, anything. We need to be authentic, because if we're authentic to ourselves, we're true, and that makes sure that we're better people. And the final one is integrity. We must have integrity in everything that we do. So my values, as what I have as a leader, as a police officer, do resonate with the police force, most definitely.
Great. So you just mentioned the kind of mindset that you had then as a very young officer. And over time it has changed. Now, do you feel any kind of pressure, or do you have any sort of pressure in this senior most role in Nottinghamshire Police?
Every day. Every day is full of pressure. Before I started this role, I had a full head of hair and no grey hair on my beard. That's how the pressure is relentless. I'm an armed commander. I'm a specialist armed commander, so I deal with the highest level of criminality. I run 5 commands, so I run everything to do with the city, everything to do with Nottingham City, everything to do with the county, all the way up to Worksop, right the way to West Bridgford. I run specialist operations, so that's firearms, dogs, traffic, collision units. I run everything to do with contact management, so the control room, our vulnerability hubs, mental health, hate crime, missing from home, crime audit, right the way through to the prevention hub, which is around prevention and engagement. That all sits under my portfolio. And then on top of that, I'm the strategic lead for the race action plan, because I really care and I feel a sense of duty and responsibility on me as the highest ranking officer of colour, which is I'm really proud of, but it's also a serious amount of pressure, because people look to me to be the change and to make things better. And then I'm also the strategic lead for stop and search. So an area of business which has been historically quite challenging, particularly amongst certain communities. So welcome to my world. That is what I have to deal with, and that's a sizable portfolio. So there's an unbelievable pressure from a work point of view. There's also an unbelievable amount of pressure I put from my own point of view, because I want to leave this job being remembered for someone who was competent, who was credible, and who was good. And I think that's really important to me as an individual, that I want to go, when I go, they go, you know, Sukhesh Verma, he was good, and he made a change, and he really did try and break the glass ceiling, particularly for people of colour, you know, for people that may not have had the easiest journey. And that's my job, and that's, you know, my role. My role is to keep everyone in this force safe, as well as the people that we serve.
So your role, as you explained, is full of pressure. You're leading all these branches.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage to keep a control on this pressure? Physical pressure, mental pressure, pressure from your family, because they must have some demands from you as well.
Yeah.
So how are you managing all of that? What's the secret?
If I knew the secret, I'd be a millionaire, and then I could retire. I think the secret is to surround yourself with good people. I've got some excellent people around me. First and foremost, I've got a brilliant wife. I've got two great kids that I like to think we've done quite well in terms of how they are, and the way that they behave, which is always an important thing. I think I have a strong work ethic that comes from my mum. As I said to you before, you know, traditional Indian families when I was growing up was very much about education. No, you know, do your work. And I sometimes find that I do too much. You know, you'll end up working late at the night and early in the morning. That's a decision that I've made. You know, I could have made the decision not to get promoted. I could have stayed, you know, at a lower rank or a middle rank. But it was me that made the decision to do what I do. And some of it is self-inflicted pressure. Some of it is me putting it on myself because I want to do everything. It's really important, as I said, to surround yourself with good people. It's really good to have routine. Routine's important for me. And I play a lot of sport. So sport is great. So after this interview today, I'll be playing squash for my club in a team match, and hitting a ball really hard is a good way of getting rid of frustration. But it's important to have balance. You've got to have balance in everything that you do. And we live in a world where there is pressure all the time. I do probably certain things now that I didn't used to do. I don't look a great deal on social media, because for all the good that happens on social media, there's also equally a lot of bad. And it's incumbent on me to manage what I see and what I hear and what I feel. And I've got a really, really excellent business support who looks after me as well. She looks after my diary, she looks after my meetings, she tells me where I need to be, tells me if I'm in a bad mood or a good mood. And so it's important, as I say, people, processes, get it right, and then everything else can start to fall into place.
Great. What has or how has policing changed in respect of inclusivity?
It's changed hugely. Inclusivity wasn't a word that existed when I joined. It was survival when I joined. Quite simply, as an officer of colour, it was you survived, and you had to come in and I don't think we're any different from any other big industry, by the way. I don't think policing is on its own. I think that the health service, I think the fire service, I think any big industry has the same challenges. And we've seen that through countless reports, you know, around inclusivity. But I think that when we start to think about diversity, equality and inclusivity, those words are now prominent. The importance about respecting everyone is so crucial in policing. And we are just a branch of society in policing, because we need to have everyone from different backgrounds, beliefs, genders, everything, because if we don't have the difference within, how can we police such a multicultural society that we live in? And Nottingham and Nottinghamshire is so diverse. So inclusivity, we couldn't survive if we didn't actually take it seriously. We think about it in everything we do, in recruitment, in policies, in processes. It is a word now that is etched on our minds. And certainly when I took over in 2019, the Uplift programme, which was the initial 20,000 new officers, and I was the superintendent lead of that programme, I wanted to make sure that we supported everyone as they came through. So it is completely worlds apart from when I joined, and it's so important.
Okay, so if things have changed in terms of inclusivity, could you give us some examples? I would want the younger generation to understand, to feel it, and then probably they would want to make a difference, be in policing.
Definitely. Well, how's it changed? Well, we now assess how good we are at inclusivity. We now have networks, strong networks to support that inclusivity. We now have greater access to the chief and the senior officers about inclusivity. We now look at it as a really important bit of business when we do promotion boards, when we do transfers, when we look at specialist departments. We understand that actually there's not a one-size-fits-all. When we look at our approach to inclusivity, it is very much around making sure that everyone can be their authentic. Remember what I said, authenticity. You can be your authentic self at work and be proud of who you are. And we've now got ourselves into a position where we educate around black history, we educate about race relations, we educate about respect, we ensure that everyone understands the difference that they're going to be policing. We never used to do that. And we have now got more leaders from different backgrounds, admittedly not enough from officers of colour, but we've now got more females than we ever had before. We've now got more LGBTQ plus officers than we've ever had before. We now recognise neurodiversity and challenges that people may have in regards to dyslexia, and previously that would have been a challenge for them to overcome when they were writing statements and files. We recognise that now. So yeah, we've done an awful lot of work.
Great. So what has changed in policing since you joined to the time you're in now?
Wow.
If we are just discussing Nottinghamshire Police.
Wow, that's a big question.
What
has changed since I joined? A lot has changed.
You just mentioned inclusivity. We know about that.
Well, inclusivity is huge. But one of the things, the way that we have to police has changed. Society has changed. Social media has changed. Criminal rights have changed. The police and the way that we're treated in the media has changed. The public expectation has changed. The whole of the world has changed in 22 years. I think that we are more geared up around technology. You know, you can see around you as you walk around the facilities and the building that we had. We never had anything like this. There was never a real emphasis on well-being. There's an emphasis now on physical and mental well-being. There's an emphasis on welfare. There's an emphasis on respecting different cultures. You know, faith rooms that we have, the fact that we recognise and respect every culture's critical days and hugely important days. So we've got the Jewish festival coming up. We'll have Diwali coming up. We, previously in the year, we had other festivals. So we recognise them all now, whereas previously we would have never ever thought about Ramadan and the impact that it would have on Muslim officers and the fasting and everything else. We do now. We take that into consideration and we look at how we can best support people around that. And similarly, like with Diwali, people who may want to take that time with their family, we understand, we're cognizant of it, we've got that level of respect. There's more emphasis that we put onto academia. So we now upstairs in our training centre, as you'll see, state of the art classrooms. We want to train people better. When I joined, it was tough. Training wasn't great. Technology, laptops, making sure that we've got that ability to deal with all of the technological changes. So everything has changed. The way that we have to lead has changed. The way that we have to treat people has changed. When I joined, if a senior officer told you to do something, all you said was yes sir or yes ma'am, and you did it. There was never any answering back, or You know, now that we have a different way of leading. You know, leadership's changed. You know, before it was very top down. I'm telling you because of what I wear on here. Nowadays we have more insight into leadership, and we're more collaborative, and we have more emotional intelligence in terms of what we're doing. We recognise that all our teams aren't going to operate the same way. So there's so much that has altered and changed in that time. And they're the critical things. The basic things, as you think about, it's like the cars and the facilities and the uniform and the kit and the equipment. Yeah, that's a part of life. That always moves on. But the important parts within is the way that we are as humans. And I think that we have developed, and we've had to change.
Definitely. So, like you had said, that the police is a part of the society. People come from the society to manage the society or provide service to the society or community. Now, what is your expectation from the community to carry on this positive trajectory? What do you want the community to do, or how can they contribute?
Well, first and foremost, if there's members from the community and your listeners that are really, really interested in policing, I want them not to be scared. I want them to step forward and come and talk to us and speak to people like Musab, our Positive Action Coordinator. Go to our website, look at all of our material, learn about us, talk to us. There's so many opportunities that we have. We need our communities, and particularly the communities that aren't reflected in policing that well, to step forward. And there's so many jobs that people can do. They do not realise what we do. And I can assure you that until you join, you don't realise that we have surveillance teams, we have teams that are involved in helicopters and planes, we have teams that are involved in drones, we have teams that run with dogs and horses, and traffic and underwater dive search teams, and we have teams that deal with homicides, and we have people that deal with cold cases, and we have intelligence units, and we deal with criminal sources. We have everything. But people do not know that, because all they seem to think is like they just see the officer in the uniform. We are a huge organisation. We have a wide variety of jobs. We have some unbelievable role models, I think, and the communities, for me, that I think that we need to break this stigma, this stigma where it's almost accepted that, the police, we try to do good and we do good. We lock bad people up. I think we actually in Nottingham should do a really good job. We actually solve the vast proportion of crimes in comparison with the other sides of the country. We've got good people that work for us. We've got good leaders. We've got a senior team that care. But our communities need to step forward. And if our communities don't want to join us to work, which is fine, by the way, then we need them to talk to us. The intelligence, the opportunity to engage, see us as friends, because we are exactly the same as them. We're just members of the public wearing a uniform. So my ask is, as I said to my team when I led recruitment in 2019, was I want us to be the team that make the difference. And at the time we had 3.6% ethnic minorities in the job. Within 18 months we got to over 7%. We doubled it in that time, because we put so much work in engaging with our communities. And I want that to go higher. It needs to be higher, because our representation's higher. So I want people to look at us to go, this is an exciting job. It's a job that you should be proud of. We need to get rid of this stigma amongst our communities that policing isn't something that you can be proud of. It's probably one of the jobs that you can be most proud of, because every day you're going home after helping people. So step forward. That's what we want. We want people.
Wow, that's a good thing. That police is there to help people, so you can go to sleep with that wonderful feeling of I've done something good today. So, what's if I request you to say something to young people who are considering a job in policing, what would you tell them? What's your message to them?
Step forward and be brave. Because actually it's a wonderful job, it's a brilliant job, it's a job that has given me immense pleasure and immense opportunities, and I've had 22 years of doing everything from driving fast cars, carrying guns, protecting the Queen, going to the Olympics, dealing with murderers, catching murderers, all the way through to setting up teams, innovating, bringing in new technology, leading programs where they're making a difference to the most vulnerable. It is one of those jobs where whatever you want to do, you can do it. And the only thing that is limiting those young people is their own self-belief. Nothing else.
Right. So, can you give some examples of how young officers and staff in policing have made a difference?
They make a difference every day. That's their job. You know, every day I read jobs every single day where vulnerable people have either been they've been victims of criminal offences, and I won't go into the types of offences, but you can imagine what it is. It's everything from the worst thing that could happen to them, through to being, you know, the victim of theft and fraud and everything else. And we are there all the time, and we have to be there to support them. And that is the difference that we make. Every single day there is 800 plus people that call us for help. We have countless demand coming through the door of people that need the police. We only have a finite number of resources. We've only got what we've got in terms of the number of officers that we're out there, but we box above our weight. We go out and we lock people up, and those big jobs that you'll see in the newspapers, and when you see the gangs that are sent down for 20 or 30 years and there's multiple offenders in there, that's because we've had a team that are dealing with them, and we've had a team that have actually got the evidence and presented it, and we've got people locked up. You know, very recently there's a gang that were involved in a murder in the city, and we got nearly 300 years of prison sentences on these individuals, and I ran that job as the firearms commander for over a year, and we got guns back from them, we got weapons back, we got drugs back. And it's those sorts of jobs where you go home and you go, I've made a difference. You know, I've made a difference. And I know we're going to come on to it in a little while, but, you know, when you think about all of the jobs that we have to deal with, they all should give you an immense amount of pride. Whether it is doing something for someone who's just passed away, because it's the last thing that you're ever going to do for them, or it's doing something for someone who's vulnerable, an elderly, or someone who's vulnerable through circumstance, or someone that's been exploited, or someone who's been kidnapped, or someone who's been a victim of theft or fraud. You are doing something good for that person in that hour of need. No one else does that. No one else, you know, there are other industries, obviously the emergency services, but that is a really unique selling point, and I don't think we actually sell that hard enough. We really don't.
So the thing that you were just saying, I mean, we from the IT world have such a bad habit of calling it a project. It wasn't one. In your case, the big gang that you managed to get hold of.
Yeah.
How many young officers were involved in it with you?
Oh, a number of them, but we had everything from surveillance to technical to uniform to firearms to dogs to everything. We had, you know, control room operators working on it. We had firearms commanders. We have many, and the majority of our workforce is now between, I think, 25 and 35, so they're young compared to me anyway. So so the young people are always involved in everything that we do, and we're getting a younger workforce because we're doing more work with the degree apprenticeships, we're doing more work with universities, we're doing more work with grassroots, so we're going to get more and more younger people coming in who have got that amazing responsibility, and it's really important.
But I think young people would also want to know, if they are thinking of a career in policing, they would also want to know, how does progression look like in policing? How fast, how slow, or what are the different steps? So what do they need to do if they want to progress?
So you probably had a lot of answers about this in your questions, but policing is still quite regimented in terms of the ranks that we have. And you start as a constable, a police constable, then you move to sergeant, and then you move to inspector, and then after inspector you got chief inspector, and if you get promoted beyond that you get to superintendent. Then if you get promoted beyond that, then you get to chief superintendent, which I am, and then after that you've got assistant chief constable and chief constable. So that's the rank structure in essence as you go up. In regards to how do you get promoted, well, sergeant and inspector both require you to do legal exams. So you have to study exams, the books that you see all around me, you have to do all of that legal work, and then you do an exam, 150 questions, and you've got to get a pass mark. So it shows that you've got the legal knowledge. And then from there you'll have to do promotion boards, so presentations, interviews, the higher you get, you do public panels. So I've had to do several public panels where you sit in front of 10 or 15 members of the community and they all ask you different questions and you have to answer them. The other thing that you've got to do is you've got to be competent and credible. You've got to put the work in. You've got to have the evidence. How fast can you do it, you asked me? Well, you can theoretically go and get promoted to sergeant after 2 years. You have to do 2 years as a probationary period to prove that you can do the job. But after that, you could get promoted after 2 years. And there afterwards, it's the speed that you want to go at. Depends how good you are and depends how competent you are.
So my next question was going to be exactly the same thing.
Okay.
In your case, in your career, how fast has this progression come? How much did you need to put in terms of theoretically your studying time to practical work?
Oh, yeah.
To
yeah.
did you get any promotions for the wonderful job that you might have done or led some kind of you know something that was very important and that gave you some roles? How does it look like in your case?
In my case, it was so I joined because I studied many years ago in terms of my degree. I joined originally on a scheme which was designed to accelerate promotion, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted, more so because I was an officer of colour, I wanted to learn my craft. I wanted to get competence and credibility, two important words for anyone. So I wanted to be a constable and I wanted to enjoy and learn to be a good cop. That's what I wanted to do. So I didn't get promoted to sergeant until I had 10 years. So I spent 10 years as a PC. Okay. And I loved those 10 years because whilst I was a PC, I was a firearms officer, I was a specialist firearms officer. I had some amazing experiences. I did surveillance. I learned and was involved in jobs that you would never get. But it was only when I had about 10 years that I decided, you know what, I'm going to go for promotion. It wasn't a job that gets you promotion. You have to get your legal exam in. Then you have to amass your evidence that you can talk in a board for an hour with various questions about what you've done and how you've done it. And it's very much about, you always got to remember, when you are articulating in an interview, it's what and the how. What did I do and how did I do it? Because that's what defines us as individuals and as leaders. Became a sergeant after 10 years, as I say. 2 years afterwards, I became an inspector. 2 years after, I became a chief inspector. 2 years after that, I became a superintendent. And maybe 3.5, 4 years after I became a chief superintendent. So how fast was it? Well, not very to start with, because I didn't want it to be fast. I wanted to learn how to be a good cop. So
do you have a favorite role? And tell us some stories about your career so far. Which is your favorite role?
My favorite role was probably one of two, really. One, either when I was a firearms officer. So I used to work with my partner on we used to call it, what they're called armed response vehicles. So every day you work with the same person, day in, day out, and you are one of the armed cars. And I did that for many years, and I really enjoyed it because it was a time when we were labelled as Shottingham. You know, the violence was quite high, and it meant it was exciting because you were policing and trying to get order in terms of a very tough time. So that was probably one of my most favourite roles. Then when I was promoted to sergeant, I was left on firearms as a sergeant, and that was also one of my favourite roles because I had my own team. I led a team of 8 firearms officers and 3 dog handlers, and they were my gang, you know, and we had, the 10 or 11 of us were my shift. They were my team. So I was in charge of them, and it was my first step into leadership. So that was probably my favourite roles, because you were still doing the job, still getting the buzz, still going home with the adrenaline after helping people or being involved in exciting things. And I do like adrenaline. I liked fast cars, and I liked that feeling. Stories, favourite stories. Wow, there's probably too many to recall.
We would like to know.
I remember dealing with having car chases with cars that had just done armed robberies. I remember being involved in a job as a firearms officer where we knew a bank was going to get robbed, so we decided to take over the bank, and we were going to be the officers that allowed the job to happen, but we were going to foil it at the time. That was quite a high threat job that we dealt with back then. We dealt with some of the most frightening gangs in terms of, after some of the murders that you would have read about many years ago. When the former Queen, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, came to Nottingham, we were part of the team that protected her and protected other diplomats and royals. Met some famous people through work, and got the chance to go into areas that you probably wouldn't. So when England won the Ashes in 2005, I was actually on the door for the dressing room as a young police officer, as Freddie Flintoff and them all were running in and out, and I was just stood there in this middle of this big party after England had won the Ashes, and that was great because that's captured on DVD now, so forever I can see me on the door as it's there. So I've got all these wonderful stories that we've been involved in. Some sad stories as well, some sad stories of having to deal with death and child death, and some tragic cases, car crashes and things that you wish that you didn't ever see. Some more operational jobs that I'm really proud of. There was recently a job that was taken to court, and I was the armed commander for it after a shooting in the city a long time ago in 2017, and I just had a hunch. I thought that this sounds like this guy, and we had some information, but really, really scant information. And we said to the investigation team, do you want this? We think it might be the guy. And they said, no, we don't think it is. So sometimes good cops have good hunches. I thought, no, we're going to go and do something on this guy, and we did it. And when we arrested him, took him out, we searched him, we found the gun on him, and the gun was the one that he used for the job. So we had him banged up for that, and that was just like really pleasing. Another one I remember was a boy who was abducted. And I was in the control room at the time, so I was the commander in the control room. The boy was abducted, and we very quickly made some fast decisions to work out how and where they'd gone to, and we'd worked out that this guy had taken the boy on a plane, and the plane was going towards Africa, but it was going to touch down in Madrid. And when it touched down in Madrid, we managed by the skin of our teeth to get onto Spanish police through Interpol to get onto the plane and stop the boy from being taken to Africa. So we brought him back to England, and that day I drove home thinking I've changed the boy's life forever, because had he have gone, we would have struggled to find him. But we managed to get him and bring him back to the UK. And so there's lots of jobs like that where you feel like they won't ever get the airtime in the media because they're good news stories. They are things that people should be celebrating, but they don't sell because they're not bad. So yeah, being involved in a lot of those. I was heavily involved in the murders in Nottingham, as you remember, last year, which is still ongoing. Heavily involved in the riots, heavily involved in commanding some big jobs, involved in the protests and other things of that nature, public meetings. So I've got I've got a book of stories of where we've been and what we've done, and my most favourable time was when I was, in uniform, on the cars, chasing around after bad people and locking up criminals. So they were my favourite stories.
Tell us a little more about the bank robbery thing.
Oh, yeah, the bank robbery.
I'm asking the next question as well,
which
is how similar is the real life role to the role life cops that we see.
Oh, right.
So, but before that, the bank robbery, because many of these real life happenings actually inspire people to write the rules for the for TVs and big screens.
Definitely, yeah. Well, the writer for Silent Witness was originally a police officer from Nottingham. So the original writer, and I understand that some of the people that have advised on recent programmes on the BBC are ex-police officers, so they're part of it. I don't know whether people have watched that Sherwood, when they do the search of the forest, the BBC drama, but that was another job I was involved in. We called it Operation Rendition at the time, so that was a long, long time ago. The bank robbery job was you generally in law it's easier and more favourable if they've actually committed the offence as opposed to in the process of committing. So it's easier for us to prove, or easier for the barristers to prove, someone that has actually done something than someone who's got a conspiracy to do something. So if I was going to rob you, it would be harder to prove that as opposed to if I had robbed you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So we had some information that a well-known gang were going to target a city bank, and it was Christmas time, so they were going to go and do it. Back in the day when cash was king, you know, cash got carried around in vans. You don't see that anymore because it's all contactless now. But they were going to rob the bank, and we needed to try and get some good evidence to lock these people up because they were bad and dangerous. So we devised a plan where we sent all the people from the bank home. We were going to be in the bank, and then when they came into the bank, it was going to be like sort of cops and robbers inside of this bank, you know. But it would have been quite scary, I think. We all sat there and we thought it was a great plan until we were sat there waiting for it to happen, and we thought, I'm not sure this is a good idea anymore. You know, all of a sudden the stolen motorbike turns up and the stolen car turns up. And you think this is going to happen now. They're really going to do this job. But similarly, I remember another job to do with robberies, and it was in Hysing Green, so an area that I knew well from being a kid. And my granddad, who's no longer alive anymore, but he used to have a shop on Radford Road. And I'd just come home from holiday, and I said to my partner, we were in the area because we were waiting for them to commit another job so we could try and catch them. And I said to my partner, I'm just going to go and say hello to my granddad. So we went to my granddad's shop opposite Radford Road Police Station. He had a travel agent. And I went in, and, you know, as you do, you go in and speak to your granddad. How are you, boss? You okay? You good? And, you know, give him a pat on the back. And then we went out and we got a sandwich, and we were just sat in the car, and they just announced that there's a car that had been stolen overnight, to be vigilant of it. And what they were doing was, this gang were committing robberies of people who were pensioners on pension day at post offices. Anyway, when they said about this stolen car, we sat there and we looked up, and there it was, just coming past us. And they had two guys in it who were two known criminals to us, but they didn't see us because we weren't in a marked car, we were in a plain car. So we pulled behind it and ended up having a chase around Hysing Green and into Radford and in through Asda, in fact, and then back out, and it crashed on Burford Road in Forest Fields, and we got both of them. And they had the weapons in the back, and they had the money from the old ladies that they'd stolen, and we got them, and they both got substantial time. And again, it was just one of those things, right place, right time. We went home again that day going, you know, we've helped some people here, we've locked up some bad people. So they're all great jobs.
So these stories definitely sound like the ones that we get to see on the telly.
Yeah.
But personally, when you are doing all these jobs, how does it feel like? How heroic do you feel? Because on the screen, it is very inspirational.
Yeah.
It is very heroic.
Yeah.
Even the hero's sadness turns into something to admire, which obviously from human point of view is not, if you look deep into the situation. But then, how actually does it feel?
Oh, it feels amazing.
Every day brings something else, some new challenge.
You do a job where every day is different. You do not know what's going to happen. You come to work and you do not know what you're going to deal with. And for me, that was really exciting. I used to look forward to going to work. So my friends would be going out into Nottingham, they'd be going for a few drinks and celebrating, and I think, I don't want to spend my money because I'm going to work on a Saturday night and I'm going to have fun because we're going to go out and catch bad people. That's how it felt. You know, I used to look forward to going to work. We used to do two morning shifts, 2 afternoon, 2 nights. Then you used to get 4 days off. And I loved having 4 days off because it meant that I could play golf, I could play cricket, I could play football, I could go to the gym, I could do what I needed to do. And the rest of the world wasn't off because it could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that you're off, and then you'd work the weekend. But I actually loved driving to work on a Saturday night. I'd see all these people out going to pubs and clubs and bars and restaurants, and I'd be driving into work going, what's going to happen? Don't know what's going to happen. We might have a chase, we might catch someone, you know, it was a game. It was a game of cops and robbers, and it was genuinely an exciting time. And when you used to catch bad criminals, it used to be slightly different to it now, but they would accept. They'd go, fair cop, you caught me. For every one job that we caught them for, they might have done another 10. But when we caught them, and that was that. So, yeah, really exciting, inspirational. You know, a few of those jobs that I've told you about, you know, the boy who was kidnapped or abducted, the, you know, looking after the Queen, being involved in someone who tried to shoot someone in the city. You know, when you catch people and you see them go to prison, it means that you've done some good. Society is that bit safer because you've done your bit. And it gives you that feeling of satisfaction. It really does.
So the police does so much for the society. Why is it that the faith of the society sometimes dwindles from, I mean, when they look at policing? Why do parents not want their children to become or take up roles in policing? What in your opinion, is the missing key between policing and the society?
I think we could get better in terms of how we communicate and how we sell ourselves. I don't think we communicate and sell ourselves as well as we could. If you think back to, there's two pivotal moments I talk about whenever I do lectures or speeches. In 2011, there were riots, if you remember, all over the country after a job that had happened in London with a man called Mark Duggan. And if you remember, there was even looting and rioting in Nottingham. Then this year we had what happened on the back of the incident in Southport and all of the protest and stroke violence, aggression and concern. On both of those occasions, the stock of the police went up. It went up because the public knew that they needed the police. The public knew that the police were there to get in the middle of them and to support them and to lock bad people up. When I think the majority of people in the public know what work we do and how hard we work. The majority do. There's a minority that don't like us. They don't like what we stand for. And some of that I get, because some of that will be historical. So we see, particularly in black and minority ethnic communities, the police are sometimes thought to be very similar to the police from their home country. You know, we see it particularly in terms of people from India, from Pakistan, from parts of Africa, where the police are very different because they police by force. We police by consent. We're very different. I think we're the best police service in the world in the way that we operate. But some people have to break that stigma from what it is that they think the police are to what we actually are. The other part is that we haven't always got it right. And we are vicariously liable for what happens anywhere. So when you see a bad apple in the Met, and he was a bad apple who did what he did, more than a bad apple, he was evil. One person can influence the reputation and tarnish it completely. And we have to all live with that. So everyone looks at us and goes, well, are all police like that? Well, no, we're not. 99.9% of police officers come to work because they want to do good, they want to help people, they want to make a difference. There is always that 0.1% or 1% of bad people that slip through the net. And that's in every walk of life. Yes. You show me any business or any school or any football team where there isn't someone who's got a tendency not to be a good person, because there is always a few. Our job is to root those bad people out of this job, but we do an amazing job. We've got to break through some societal stigma. We also are battling against the sins of our fathers, you know, in terms of racism. Police were very different many years ago in terms of the way that they treated people like me and you. And we are trying to readdress that now in 2024. We are readdressing things that happened in the 80s and in the 90s, and we have got still a lot of work to do. But I wouldn't be sat here if I didn't believe in what I do. So if there's someone that you can look at and go, there is someone who is brought up from being a person of colour, who is a person of colour, who is one of the most senior officers in this force and believes in what we do, well, yeah, I do. And that's the message that I send out.
Thanks, Suk. These were very inspiring piece of experience that you shared with us. I hope the younger generation, especially people who have not considered policing as their career, will look into these careers and figure out which fits them or what fits with them as a person, what fits their own core values and ethics, what you would like to contribute, how you would like to contribute to the society and the community that you live in, because policing is all about giving back. And in trying to do so, there's a lot to take from policing as well. So, an immense thank you for explaining, for elaborating on the kind of work that you have done, for telling the young people, letting the young people know how they could progress if they were looking for a career in policing, and also for mentioning how things have changed over time. So it's not going to be exactly the same how they think. It's rather going to be more, there's a lot more positive thing happening here, as we have understood in our interviews with other police officers as well. So, yes, at least Nottinghamshire Police has made it very clear that things have changed, time has changed, things have changed, and the avenue for a very satisfactory career in policing has come. Thank you, Sukh. So that brings us to the end of another episode of Behind the Badge. A heartfelt thank you to Mr. Sukhesh Verma, Chief Superintendent, Local Policing and Operations, for sharing his invaluable experience and the essential work that he does for Nottinghamshire Police. If you feel inspired to consider a career with Nottinghamshire Police, please scan the QR code on the screen to express your interest. For more information, visit nottinghamshire.police.uk or email us at careers@nots.police.uk. Join us again for more enlightening stories on our next episode. I'm Anu. Stay safe and take care.